Thanks everyone for joining us. This is yet another episode of our technology industry group, Lunch and Learn. Within the Alignable Technology Industry Group, what we try to do is create a forum where technology business owners and technologists can get together, network, build relationships, and I think more importantly, learn from each other. So as part of that effort, we host these lunch and learns whenever we have subject matter experts, such as Deb Friar here, to share their core expertise with us. And today we're going to be learning about how AI tools and generative AI can help us improve productivity within our businesses. I for one can attest to the fact that there are not enough hours in the day, right? So anything that can help make my work more efficient, I'm keen to learn about. So that said, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. A little bit about me, Deb Friar. I founded Quant Fusion about 18 months ago. And we're going to talk about the problem that we solved towards the end of the presentation, but it has to do with an issue all of your customers have, and that they are having difficulty accessing their data. Prior to this role, I was in primarily large corporations, consumer packaged goods, marketing technology, and most recently commercial food service equipment, and was an early subscriber to ChatGPT, and it has completely transformed the way I run my company and the way I do business. So hopefully I'll share some new things you haven't heard before. And so with that, I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. So we're going to really focus on AI tools to improve your productivity. And as I was writing this and considering and thinking back about how I use it, there's a lot more than three. Originally, I talked about three, but there's a lot more. So hopefully I don't overwhelm you with information. So what we're going to do for the next hour, you may recall we did offer a survey to people in this group. We had about 23 people respond. So I have a couple of highlights in terms of the results. And then we're going to do a deep dive into generative AI. So ChatGPT, CoPilot, Gemini, the old Baird, et cetera, are all considered generative AI tools. So we're going to talk about why are they so popular, what some of the risks are, and there's some nuances to working with them and prompting effectively, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on that as well. Then we'll talk about specific tools to enhance productivity. Many of those are off the shelf, and some of those are how you can wrangle ChatGPT and others to do the same. Keep in mind, when I say ChatGPT, I'm referring to kind of all those large language generative AI models, such as Gemini, CoPilot, et cetera. And then at the end, we're going to talk about data, because you need data to do any of this. And the opportunity is, I would argue, every one of your customers has the same issue in accessing their data. So we're going to talk about that, because it's an opportunity for you to add value to your customers, for us to partner together on solutions. So going to the survey, on the left-hand side, we asked people how many hours a week are they using tools such as ChatGPT. And it was interesting to see a real mix. We have about a third of people who are kind of just getting started, not using it a lot, a third kind of in the middle, and then a third that are using it pretty extensively. And we also asked, how are you using it? Are you using it primarily to run your business and look for productivity improvements? Or is it actually embedded, and is it part of the product you sell? About 50% of the people said that they are using it for productivity, and about 40% said it's embedded in their product. So again, really nice mix, and was really excited to see how many people are embedding it into their products. The other question we asked, which helped inform this presentation, is what topics are you most interested in learning more about? And so the orange bar on the right of these is the ones that people said they're most interested in. And by far, operational efficiency blew everything else away. The next two closest were the content generation and then the data analysis and insights. And so we'll cover all of those as part of this talk. All right, so let's dig in. What is generative AI? There's a lot of misperceptions about how it works. Keep in mind that it was developed to be a helpful assistant. And in a minute, we're going to do some side-by-side comparisons of prompting in different tools. And you're going to really see what helpful assistant means versus, for example, search. So it's always there to help, which is great news, but sometimes can be not so great news. And we'll talk about that in the risks section. So how does it work? It generates human-like text simply by learning patterns. And as you're probably all aware, ChatGPT and the other models, but ChatGPT more so, has been trained on a huge corpus of data, of a lot of information across the internet. And one of its benefits is it has so many users that it's using all of the user information to additionally train the model. So it's just getting better and better and better and smarter over time. It does not, some people think it goes out and like searches the web and then makes conclusions, but it doesn't do that. All it does is, based on your prompt, it will predict the next word. And then it will just keep adding on until it feels it's completed that portion. And again, how it does that is based on the training data. The other thing that's interesting is when you read what it tells you, it comes across as being very authoritative, but it really has no idea what it's saying. It doesn't understand what it told you. It's just generating based on how it's been trained to generate text. So it's kind of fascinating, actually, to think about it that way. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put one prompt into a search engine, and then we're going to put one prompt into an LLM, specifically ChatGPT. And that's going to really bring to light how these two tools really serve completely different purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over here. All right. So we're going to start with Google search, and Google search, right? The main purpose of Google search is to earn, oops, are you seeing the Google page?
Yes.
Okay. Is to earn Google money first and foremost, and then help other people sell things. So I've already gone in here, and I'm just going to just click the prompt I did a little bit earlier. So you can see that it's basically going to give you links from a lot of different companies. You can see the ones at the top are often sponsored. And so if you want to answer this question for yourself, what you need to do is click on each of these links, read the information, and then somehow combine it and put together your own outline. Because again, its purpose is really just to put in front of you those things that are going to earn it money. All right, hold on, I gotta scooch this down here. All right. So now versus ChatGPT, and the nice thing is you don't even have to spell right and it still works. All right, so let's see what it says here. And in this case, because it's a helpful assistant, it's going to put together an answer. And as you're going to see, this is a quite robust answer considering how short my prompt was and how really very general the statement is, right? What company, what reporting, who are you, why do you care? So this is a really good place. You can read through this and say, hey, some of this works for me, some of this doesn't, but it gives you a very robust answer, again, because it's meant to be a helpful assistant. All right, so why did ChatGPT become the most popular app ever? So for those of you, you may recall, they reached 100 million downloads or 100 million, sorry, 1 million users in 5 days. And I think the next closest was a couple of months. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, as you just saw, the interface is super easy. I mean, you could put any child who can speak can go in front of this and start to learn it, right? No training is needed. And the results are instant. You don't have to wait to upload data. You don't have to clean data. You don't have to process data. You get the results instantly. The second is it has enormous versatility and utility. Really unlimited applications. Anything that your mind can, conjure up, you can do. You can ask, you can put in prompts, and it will give you a question. I have yet to stump this thing with anything I've ever asked it. Because again, that training data set was so huge and has so much information in it. The other thing is it's industry agnostic because again, all the training data. So you can ask it about any industry, any hobby, anything in nature, and that information's in the training data, it's going to answer you. And then the third thing is the high quality human-like responses. It's just like having a conversation with a subject matter expert. Or I also liken it to having an interview with someone where you ask a question, you're not sure what the response is, you hear the response, and then you might want to probe a little bit into what they said, or you may want to redirect, or you may want to challenge them. And these types of tools work exactly the same. The other thing I will say, and I don't know if all of you have experienced this, but sometimes it gives you an answer that you feel like it's reading your mind. So it really has an uncanny ability to understand context, just like we saw with that very simple prompt. And yet it gave us information that was really relevant. So there are real risks of using these tools that can cause you personal injury, you professional harm, or even hurt your business that you're working for. And so I've created what I call this risk consideration matrix. So depending on how you're using the tool, you need to take into account more or less how risky the output will be from that tool and how you use it. So for example, if your goal, your mission when you're approaching ChatGPT or others is exploration or brainstorming, or you want to name a new product, or you want to write a kid's story for your own children, the risk of that is very low. And actually, the fact that it does hallucinate and makes things up is a benefit because you want that creativity. Now, when you move to moderate risk, that's when anything you're authoring is going to be shared with someone else. It's going to your executive team, or you're doing it as a LinkedIn blog. In that case, there's moderate risk that the information that it gave you is incorrect, can completely be false, could be biased, could be bigoted. So you really want to double check your facts as well as look at every single statement it's written before you publish anything. And then the highest risk is around decision making, and especially those decisions that are very important. So legal, financial, health. That is where I use it. I use ChatGPT to come up with ideas. You know, for example, let's say you have a health symptom and you want to find out what it could be. But then I'll go double check what it told me with mayoclinic.com, or I'll go to, and I'll show you in a second, there's another tool called Perplexity that does use the internet. That's where you really want to make sure that you're 100% certain what it's giving you is correct. So what I want to do now is share 5 what I think are kind of, in some cases, humorous stories, but that really help bring to life some of these issues. So the first issue is it can offer damaging advice. And this is a case of an attorney in New York who had a case, used ChatGPT to find precedent to be able to use it in their arguments, presented something they found on ChatGPT, and it turned out that what ChatGPT gave them, that was a case that never existed, and it was completely made up. So obviously that hurt that attorney's reputation. The judge would now potentially question that person as well as other lawyers coming. So just an example of how it can, you know, give you damaging advice. The second one is it can be conned. So this is an example where a car dealership had a chatbot on their site. At the bottom, it said powered by ChatGPT. Someone saw that, someone knew how to wrangle ChatGPT and basically convinced the bot to agree to sell him a very expensive auto for $1 and to repeat back to him that this was binding and there were no takesies, backsies, which I think is hilarious. But just an example for if you know how to, if you have those hackers and you know how to wrangle the system, you can definitely con ChatGPT no matter where it's sitting on whatever website. On the flip side, it can also con you. So here's an example where somebody set ChatGPT or a similar, was ChatGPT's bot, to go hire someone on TaskRabbit. So it went through the process on the website and it got pretty far until it hit the CAPTCHA. And so what it did is it reached out to another human and it asked them to complete the CAPTCHA for them. And the other human said, "Are you a robot?" And it said, "No, but I'm visually impaired." And the person's like, "Okay, I guess." Clicked the CAPTCHA and it was able to complete and hire a human to do a task. So number 4 is it can spill your secrets. You probably are aware that there's open source tools like ChatGPT. Any data you put into that, whether it's your prompt information, whether you upload data, that is all going into their data training sets, which means anybody searching could put in your company name and ask questions and potentially pull that proprietary data out. Well, on the flip side, there are also closed models that people are building companies behind their own firewalls. However, if there is an API to ChatGPT, even though it's supposed to be closed, students at Northwestern had an almost perfect success rate of being able to hack into even those closed systems. Just by creative, like I said, wrangling and creative questioning, kind of like playing 20 questions, but with a GPT. And then finally, it can make you appear bigoted. Humankind, many people have been bigoted. And the internet, because it was trained on a lot of information in the internet, there's a lot of not great textual information out there. And so you have to be careful when you do ask for a response that you read it carefully, because it can be bigoted or worse. So just something to be careful of. So outside of those risks, there are also a couple of challenges that it's not super great at. First is handling complex tasks. You can't really put a math equation in there. It's not really good at math. And if you think about ChatGPT, it's really text-based and about creating text, not so much numerical things like that. The other thing is maintaining consistency over long conversations. I've used it a lot for coding. And what I've found is it might give me a code block, 4 or 5, what I call sprints back. And then when I'm iterating and continuing down into my code block, I'll expect it to refer back to like a definition or something it gave me earlier, and it just doesn't do that. So it's not very good at that. It also lacks emotional intelligence. So sometimes the responses can come across as very robotic and in some cases rude. And then finally, it doesn't really understand nuances. So if it's a cultural reference or sarcasm, it doesn't always understand exactly what you mean by that. So you may not get the same response that you're looking for. All right, so now how do you choose a model? On the left are a bunch of models that were highlighted back in November of 2023. You can see that there's some small models, there's some big models. And really what it comes down to is, what are you trying to accomplish? So what I've listed here are just characteristics of models that you should take into account. So first, is it an open or a closed model? That has to do with that data privacy that we talked about. If you have proprietary information that you don't want to share, you're going to want to go closed versus opened. Some models are generalized versus specialized. So GPT obviously is very general. Specialized might be you're a law firm and you want to be able to search and summarize legal cases from your own company in the past. Large versus small, again, has to do with, if I'm bringing it internally, I don't want to pay to have a large model to train or run, so you're going to choose a small model. Generative versus discriminative. Generative means it's going to generate long form, it's going to brainstorm with you. Discriminative is more around categorization. So again, you might have your own data set and you might say, find me every case in which, that was in the state of Florida, for example. A couple of other things to think about is, how is the output actually, what is the process? Some of them sequentially are producing the words and others actually produce multiple words in parallel. And then finally, are you okay with just a text-only model, meaning you're typing something in and your response is text, or do you need multimodal? Or maybe you want to upload video and audio, and have it either produce text or maybe come up with video or audio on the back end. Okay, so now that we've kind of dug into LLMs, what they're all about, the risks, now let's talk about AI tools that will help improve your productivity. So these are tools that I use, at least the first three that I use quite a bit. ChatGPT, I'm on pretty much all day long. I would say I spend 10 to 30% of my time on it. One of the main uses I started with it was on coding and debugging, and it's really, really amazing for that. I have not used a code specific bot. I know some have been built, but I've had really good success with ChatGPT. In addition, I save quite a bit of time on marketing, whether that's positioning, identifying my ICP, coming up with value propositions, and then coming up with content. It saves so much time and energy, and frankly, money to outsource it to an ad agency. And as we said, just make sure that the information it's returning to you is accurate, that you're double checking it. And again, if you're going to use something for math and data analysis, I'd probably go to Python or something like that rather than try to use a large language model. So Perplexity is also a large language model, but they call themselves an AI enhanced search. So I'm going to back out of this again, and we're going to put that, that same prompt into Perplexity. All right. All right. So what you're going to see here, it comes back with, it looks like 6 or 7 sources, and then it is going to also summarize it. So I use Perplexity when I want to cite information, when I want facts, or for example, let's say I'm looking for a motivational quote by someone in the 1700s who was a well-known scientist. That's when I use Perplexity, because Perplexity does search the internet, where, as I said earlier, ChatGPT doesn't necessarily use that same type of process in developing its content. Okay. The third one I use a lot, and I highly recommend, I am on their community lead as well, is Apollo. Apollo has saved me at least 75% of my time on business development tasks. And what's great is it also has additional tools that started out as kind of standalone. So think of Calendly for a calendar function. Apollo has that as part of their subscription. Think of, Firefly in terms of meeting summarization. Apollo has that as part of their subscription. They also allow you, when you are building an email campaign, it has an AI generated email in it. You fill out a lot of information about your company, your URL, your ICP, all of that, and it will put together campaigns for you. It has automated sequences, which I know a lot of similar companies have, but that's great because you set up 12 in a sequence, you let it fly, and now you don't really have to touch it for the next 6 weeks. You just have to monitor, open rates and things like that. And the analytics are very robust with open rates as well as website visits. The fourth one is HeyGen. This is really a game changer for folks that want to use video. So it's basically studio quality videos that are use AI generated avatars and voices. So I actually posted on this probably 9 months ago. And what I did was I uploaded just a still photo of myself. I uploaded a voice recording from a previous webinar I had done. And then I typed in the text that I wanted for the video. And basically it took my photo and animated it to show me speaking the words that I had just typed. So very fast for those of you who have done video. You're generally doing multiple takes and or you're doing a lot of editing. And with this, because it's saying exactly what you wrote down. There's no ands, if buts in it. There's no silence. There's no staggering over words. So it's really amazing. And they have over 300 voices and 40 languages. And you can choose a human-looking avatar that people are going to assume as an employee for your company and have them do a lot of your videos. So you can do it for sales videos, training videos, etc. But I highly recommend it. It's a great tool. Other tools, DocuSign is not AI, but when I'm doing NDAs, when I'm doing agreements, when I'm doing partnership agreements, to get the information from someone, type it in, email it to them. Did they send it back? DocuSign just saves so much time, and it gives you a dashboard of everything you've sent out. And so you can check to see if it's come back or not. To me, it's the best, whatever, $12 spent, whatever I'm paying for it. The next one is Arziv, which is an open access research repository. One of the things I like about it is has an extensive range of information on STEM fields. The other thing that's interesting is it's prior to peer review being completed. So you get the information and the data very, very quickly. And with as fast as AI is moving, I'd like to see what kind of the thought leaders out there, what they're thinking about, what research they're doing, what are they finding, whether or not, it being peer reviewed, because this is moving so fast, it doesn't matter as much to me. Again, on the video front, Loom is great. If you want to do demos, you want to do training videos, it allows you to record your screen and your mouse movements and things like that. So that's also a really great tool. And then finally, Motion. I just learned about Motion from actually somebody in this group, and I'm going to sign up for this weekend. But it's AI-driven productivity. And what it'll do is, based on your prioritization and due dates, it will schedule your calendar for you. But then if you have an interruption, let's say you were supposed to work on a project this afternoon and you got an urgent call from a customer, it will take that time slot and it'll move everything else in your calendar back and reschedule that next most important thing. So I'm really excited to try that. I think that'll help from a productivity standpoint as well. The other thing is, as I said, I use it for everything. So I thought I'll give you a list of 5 things I used it for this week. So definitely coding and debugging. I've been challenged by some advisors I have to rethink my company name. So I did some research on that as well. I am very interested in AI agents, so I did some product research on that. Going back to Arziv, you can take white papers off of there, download them, and then upload them into ChatGPT, and now you can ask it questions, or you can upload multiple and ask it questions around the multiple documents together. So it's a great way to get up to speed rather than reading a 30-page white paper and trying to make sense out of it. Another thing I did was I needed to develop a technical roadmap for kind of the next stage of my company. And then also I do have a tech stack. The documentation isn't great. So I was looking for ways to automate the documentation by just pointing it, at my Google stack. Okay, so now what we're going to do is get into prompting tips and tricks. And this is where I hear and read the most frustration from people that are using large language models. And if you do follow people on LinkedIn, there are a lot of folks that are like, here's the top 1,000 prompts you need, right? The problem is very rarely is a mission accomplished with a single prompt. It's a very iterative process. So kind of the schema that I use is when you have a task that you want to complete, I call that a session. So when you're starting with a fresh screen, and then that continuous interaction back and forth, I call when you have, so let's say you want to write a blog, a 3,000 word blog, and you're going to have the opening statement, you're going to set up the problem, you're going to have your 3 to 5 kind of solution talk points, and then, what's in it for me and your summary. So rather than try to tackle that whole piece at once with prompts, you're going to want to break those up into what I call sprints. So you'll have a sprint for your opening statement. And then as you iterate on that, I call those shots. So you give a prompt, you get a response. You respond to that response, you get a new response, and you're iterating through. Those are shots back and forth until you have that one sprint completed. Then at the end, what you do is you basically connect all the sprints together to have your full document. Because if you try to write the full document at once, to me, it just doesn't work as well, and it doesn't come out with the end product that I'm hoping for. So what are 10 tips and tricks for prompting success? The first thing is talk to your ChatGPT as if it were a summer intern. Okay. It doesn't know anything about your industry. It doesn't know anything about your company, doesn't know anything about the functional area it's in. So you really have to feed it very piecemeal and very easy information in order for it to do its job. The second is before you start a session, start with the end in mind, especially if it's something long form. Think about, what is my audience? What do I want my audience to get out of this? What are the 2 or 3 critical talk points I want to make sure are in there? How do I tie my company's value proposition to the call to action? Because if you start there, then when you get into your session with your ChatGPT, you're going to be more critical of the responses it's giving you, so that each time you're doing a sprint, you're going to be happier with your sprint because you've done that work in advance. In addition, you want to feed it context and assumptions. The more context it has, and the more information it has, the better the response is going to be, and it's going to be more aligned with kind of your best case scenario that you thought about in advance. And I would be more specific versus general. So on those examples that we did, those were very general statements. We could have added, who were the reports for? How would they be using the reports? How does it impact the company performance? What industry are we in, et cetera? So I would have been much more specific in how I wrote that. Keep in mind, it is an iterative process. You're not going to put in a prompt and get exactly what you need. It's back and forth, a discussion, and in some cases, it feels like a negotiation to get to where you want to go. There is also research that says if you use language like take a breath and go step by step, or one of the tricks that I use is I use the word acknowledge. So I will give it the prompt, and at the end of the prompt, I'll say acknowledge first before you do anything. And it will either summarize or it'll say, yes. And then I say proceed. And for some reason, those 2 things kind of helps it mentally regroup. I know it's not doing that, but it feels like the responses you get are more in line with what your expectations are. Now, you may be getting started. You may kind of know what you want, but you don't know how to get started. You can definitely ask the tool to help you with that. So give it some background, tell it what you're trying to accomplish, tell it who you are in terms of your role, your company, or maybe it's a personal thing, a personal task. And just say, give me some ideas for how to get started, and it'll give you ideas, and then that'll get you off and running. The other thing is when you are in a session and you're doing your sprints and your shots, when you see it going in a direction you don't like, or if it's in error, make sure you correct it immediately. What I do in a lot of cases is I'll actually go back to its response and I'll copy the phrase or I'll copy the line and I'll start a new prompt with it, and then I'll give it feedback on that specific line. Or for example, with emails, I'll put in my prompt and it'll come back. And what you probably know too is you can put the same prompt in 10 times and you're going to get 10 different answers in different tones and formats and things like that. So I will just sometimes say too formal, or make it less formal, or make it more, like cheeky. And a lot of times what it'll come back with, first of all, it'll be significantly different from the first one, but a lot of times that second one will nail it right on the head. And then if you get to the point where it's totally off the rails, then it's best to just start over. So click a fresh screen and just start from scratch. Okay, so let me just check time here. Okay. All right, so now what we want to do is talk about data. And I will tell you 99% of your customers have this problem, is their company data is locked in and freeing it is probably their biggest productivity opportunity that they have. So why does this happen? Well, if companies have made a lot of acquisitions, then they may have one warehouse on SAP, one warehouse on Oracle, maybe their headquarters is a homegrown system. And rather than step back and decide what system do I want all these to be on, and then, oh my God, how long is that going to take? And how much money is it going to cost to get them all on the same one? They just live with what they have. Another also siloed data. Service has their database, sales has their database, HR has theirs. So purposely, for whatever reason, data was siloed as it was collected. I've also run into internal politics where, again, you have two systems and the two sides can't decide. One thinks they have more power than the other, and they can't decide which way to go. So they just stagnate. But that doesn't mean that they still need to integrate their data. And there's frankly, with Python script and things like that, and Stack, the cloud stack, it's a lot easier to do project-based work and integrate data and solve things and really free up that data. So how can you find out if your customer has these issues? So here's a couple of questions that you can ask almost anybody in the organization, and that's going to give you clues on if they have poor data access. So first is, do they have reliance on Excel or Google Sheets? And specifically for me, I used an Excel function called VLOOKUP. And that's where you're basically taking one spreadsheet and you're referring it to another spreadsheet, and you're saying, if it says red, go get the information for red and write it down. Finance, marketing, production, operations, logistics, they're all doing this today. The second is, how many hours do you spend creating reports? And do you create the same reports frequently? How fresh is your data? Is it real-time data? Is it batch? How long does it take to get the data? Do you have to call another department every week to get your data? And then how do you get it back from them? Is it an Excel spreadsheet, etc.? So these are all questions you can ask to find out if they're having this issue. And if so, it's an opportunity for us to collaborate to find some solutions for them. So my solution that I started out with really focuses on a specific part of supply chain. And the issue is there is a lack of cross-department visibility across these functional areas I have in the upper right-hand corner. And because of those visibility barriers, it has company-wide supply chain repercussions. Now, a lot of times executives aren't aware of this issue because in any given function, it's not a lot of time. And nobody is looking across all of the functions to really figure out how big this problem is, but it's actually quite large. So what are some of the, the issues that this lack of data visibility and this issue with siloed data causes? Well, first is late order ship dates, because it's really, really difficult for a customer service team working with a wholesaler or a manufacturer to give a date to a customer, the right ship date in the first place, because there's so many data sources they're supposed to look at, as well as prioritization, that most customer service teams, or a lot of customer service teams, sometimes they just guess at what date they should give the customer. There's also a lack of financial visibility, because until it's very close to the end of the month, finance isn't sure what is going to ship, especially if you're a wholesaler and you have inventory coming in from all over the world and you have dozens or hundreds or thousands of suppliers. It's really hard to keep track of when all of that inventory is arriving in order to fill the open orders. It also drives up product returns because of errors in how people are ordering. It can also drive out of stocks, as well as on the flip, inventory overages. It can increase shipping costs because at the beginning, the customer service team gave the customer the wrong date. The date arrives, there's no inventory to fulfill the order, and now that order needs to be expedited. It can also drive misaligned resources. So for example, let's say the warehouse is expecting 5 containers to come in next Wednesday, but the containers are delayed or are coming in early. They brought all those resources in to unload those containers, and then the date's wrong because they don't have up to the minute information and data. And no surprise, it can cause customer frustration as well as employee dissatisfaction. So how do we resolve that? We integrate data. We don't care what form it's in. We can do CSV files, APIs, JSON files, integrate, doing direct integrations. And we can do all of those if all of the sources of data are different. So we do that using Python script and uploading data and merging it on common features. Then what we do is we transform it using proprietary algorithms and data science techniques, and which ones we use depends on what their use case is and what they're trying to accomplish. So we generally have a one-time implementation, and then after that, it's a SaaS product, into the future. And then finally, what we do is we either visualize it or we give them a way to a user interface that they can do very quick queries, which is a great differentiator and a different way to do it versus doing all these manually and ad hoc. And the good news is we can do a POC without any IT resources because we can do it with CSV files, which the business owners can generally just pull right out of their systems. So on the left is just a look at what our main interface is. So customer teams and customer service teams and sales simply type a sales order in, they hit go. And then below it, it shows the status of that sales order in terms of what was the due date. Is it on time? If it's not on time, which item in that order is the issue? What container is that item on? And when is that container arriving, or truck or train or whatever the case may be. So the benefits are pretty significant. So it saves customer service members 250 hours a year for every member. And then it saves sales, warehousing, procurement, and finance FTEs, another up to 150 hours a year. And the great news is it is evident immediately that this system is working because all of those people will immediately free that time up as soon as they implement this system. From a finance benefit perspective, it gives them visibility every single day on how much they're going to ship, expected to ship for that month. So versus waiting until the end of the month and, praying that what the forecast is actually what's going to ship, they can see the visibility of how things are changing over time. It also reduces those expedited ship costs because you have more visibility into when inventory will be available. So the original date, your customer service teams will be more accurate. And then it aligns that work with the resources so they have instant updates if a container is late or early, and can adjust their warehouse staff accordingly. So with that, I will stop and take questions.
So I do have a couple of questions that the tools that you listed are all of those tools available for free?
So ChatGPT is free. Perplexity, I believe, has a free solution. Apollo has a free solution, but you're limited. So most of them have freemium, so they'll give you a little bit, but then you have to upgrade for the others.
Great. Because I do have a paid. I've used ChatGPT and Apollo before, and I've used the paid version of either of those. There are a couple of questions that are in. Well, first off, we do have a hand raised, so Warren is here. I'm going to allow Warren to speak. Hey, Warren, can you unmute?
Yes, sir.
I like the pick.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what's that?
I said I like the picture. Do you have a question?
I actually, if I hit it, I did it by accident. I'm sorry. But I would ask Deb, where do you think it currently stands now with, setting up the structure of coding? Since you've had a lot of experience playing with it, is there something that's good for creating the framework for your projects that you can hand off to your developers to run with?
It's a good question. I have used it primarily to do the actual code, and I kind of do the framework. I have the framework in my head. So I've actually never tried that, but I would guess that it would work. As long as the prompting was specific enough, it should work, but I just haven't done it that way.
Is there any starting point that you'd recommend as what you think has been a little bit more agile with, you know, development specific tasks?
I'd have to think about that, honestly. Maybe,
Okay,
maybe we
fair
can
enough.
brainstorm that a little bit offline.
Sure, not a problem.
Thanks, Warren.
problem.
I see Matt has his hand up. Matt, I'm going to speak to Matt.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I have a question similar to what Diana put in the question and answers, but one of the things I've seen over time being a data warehouse architect and a DBA is a concept called data lineage. And how do you satisfy that when you're pulling in from all these disparate sources? There's a concept called single source of the truth. How does your company or your clients actually have confidence in the data and can do that traceability back to the actual true source of the data? Since everything is a CSV file, that makes it really difficult. But I'm kind of curious how you guys solve that, because anybody at the stakeholder CXO level is going to want to be able to, if I'm going to use this as meaningful data or actionable data, I need to know where it's coming from, and I need to have confidence in that whole system. And you mentioned a lot of things, ETL, that data may not even look as it did when it was initially exported. So just kind of curious how you guys solve that problem.
No, I think that's a really good question. Part of what we're doing is we're basically just getting a report out of a system they're already using. So I'm wondering, in a case like that, if the lineage doesn't just fall to the original source. Now, when I ingest it, I do have the date on which all of that data was uploaded and the date of what the report was. So I do have that information. And because what my specific product solves more of a short term or like a future question, not so much a past question, right? And so what I need to know is what's my inventory right now? What's my sales order right now? What freight is inbound right now? Lineage may not be as much of an issue, but correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm not understanding that correctly.
No, that's fine. I was just curious more than anything else, just because that seems to be a common practice. CSV, EDI, any flat file that you can bring in. But do you not have clients? And I guess this is and maybe that's the case, is that you guys are very laser specific on inventory management and orders, but do you need time series analysis? And if so, does this go into some form of data warehouse, data mart, where you may or may not have fact and dimensions and snowflakes, and going back to the whole data science thing of this?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So this specifically doesn't do forecasting. It simply answers the question, how should I date the sales orders that are currently in the system? So that's a good question. I hear what you're saying now, is that if you're training models, then you want to look at where did that data come from?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Matt. I think Chris has hand up. I'm going to bring Chris in.
Hey, Deborah, how are you doing? Sorry, Deb. How have you felt that organizations have been ready to handle the data governance requirements for dealing with AI, understanding which data is going in, which data is coming out, classifying it, protecting it, ensuring if you're using models outside that you're not sharing data that they shouldn't, all of those things?
Unfortunately, I don't have an enormous amount of experience doing private models with AI. So I can only, conjecture, and I would probably do some research to kind of understand, but I've heard it's kind of across the board, depending on who you're working with, how solid their data governance was to begin with. I mean, it's a little bit as you know, kind of the wild, wild west. So I apologize. I can't give more insight into that.
No problem. I felt that that was the current state of data governance when it comes to using artificial intelligence. It's one of the things that I also help clients with. So that's why I wanted to see your opinion on it.
Got it. Good. Thank you for the question.
Diana, I know that you had posted a question in the chat. You can read it off there, or you can come off mute if you like.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was just curious about how data would be normalized because I've had plenty of years of dealing with different departments, outputting CSV files and their formats, and it's even down to country codes, right? Some people might, depending on how fields are set for entry, how they're populated with information. So just wondering, how does the normalization process work?
Yeah, so generally when I start with a customer, in fact, I just did a project with a national retail chain, and we ingested 18 different files. So basically I just build the script in Python, because there should be consistency from a department's file every single time. And so we'll do a light implementation for each customer where we build the script to do that work on the data before the data is then ingested into the model.
Okay. And what's the validation process like? Is that using AI, or because I love this. This makes my brain go, yay. Because
right now I'm doing human in the loop. I'm not doing any AI yet, but I am definitely exploring that. However, I will tell you, I move slowly until it feels like it's actually going to work. So it's something I do behind the scenes. And then once it's kind of ready for prime time, then that's when I would kind of trot it out.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the question.
So I saw that Chris had posted whether you could share the tools and referral links. I think maybe that's something that you can share after, and you can post it in the group.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I'll do that. I don't honestly have referral links for most of them, believe it or not. I probably should, but I will send you the Apollo one for sure.
Excellent. Warren, I see you have your hand up, or is it still from the last time? Speak to. There we go. Hey, Warren, did you have anything else to add?
Yes, I do. Sorry, I thought I was still connected. So as far as the questions that just came out about, the zero trust, single source of truth, I do have some insight in that. We've been working on that plane, and it really takes a combination of some other best practices to be able to effectively do it. So if you're have the concepts of some kind of blockchain distributed ledger, kind of identifying the changes in data, you have some kind of zero trust model, those different things, the AI can actually go against those things to determine the most recent changes to the data. And then you can, as long as you incorporate that in part of your querying system, that the distributed ledger is authoritative over the data, that kind of gets into it. That's how we do data governance in general, and zero trust and things like that is, so you can incorporate all of that and your digital vault information, if there's, ability to delve into that set of data as well. So it's the good reason why all those should be best practices when it comes to data governance, because now as we get into machine learning, data sciences, fuzzy logic, it's all kind of tied together. So.
Got it. No, I appreciate that. I definitely want to collaborate with you on that.
Sure, not a problem. There's a path though.
So I agree. I mean, I think that's the first thing that jumped to mind when you talked about creating a technical roadmap there. I mean, there are clearly folks on the call that, can provide some, some insight and some value as you sort of, think about future versions of your platform or your solution.
It might be interesting too, maybe Warren, you've already looked at doing this, is collaborating, creating a GPT that gets better over time as people use it.
Yeah, that's part of our process, because we're trying to incorporate this into a whole compliance based on, the distributed ledger, zero trust, data governance, the digital vaults, who can access it, or, undiscovered, immutable records, those type of things. So we're definitely working on that, because we do it in different, more manual processes, but being able to incorporate AI and leverage things like machine learning, data sciences, it would be invaluable to people that are playing with big data lakes.
Definitely. Good. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments, feedback for Deb? Well, Deb, thanks for joining us. I think that was an inspired, presentation. I know I learned a lot. I too would like to get the list of the tools that you mentioned. I was familiar with a few of those. I think the Perplexity, was it?
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly one that's on my list to check out. Because a lot of the use cases that you mentioned align with get like a camera, with what I use, this data for, right? In a lot of my writings, it's important to be able to generate, referenceable data, right? And I think that is important. So this has been great. This recording will be posted and placed in the group for those who signed up and were not able to to attend. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us, Deb.
Thank you for having me, and thanks everyone for attending. Really appreciate it, and would love to keep the conversation going after this. So thanks everyone.
So one of the things that Deb and I talked about in our last touch point before this is my harebrained idea of pulling together, an AI mastermind group within our group. And I'm looking forward to working with Deb and others who have clearly deep expertise in this space. I think that, deeper collaboration, amongst us all, can provide, immense value. So, Deb, I commend you for, your the leadership, and I look forward to you helping us do, more of that, primarily within the AI space.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for considering me for the team.
Excellent. Well, that's it, folks. Thanks everyone for joining out. Look out for the recording. I look forward to seeing you all in future Smart Connects and Lunch and Learns. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.